Um, his email is um, aaron.agarwal.1706 at capitaldebate.org.
Aaron, Aaron, right?
Yeah,
Agarwal. What was the number after his name? Sorry.
1706.
06 at capitaldebate.org.
Yeah.
Okay, so let him know I'm sending him another invite now. Hopefully he doesn't decline this one. You know if he got it, Davin?
I don't know if he got it yet. Oh, wait, he just said okay.
Okay. Hopefully he in the meantime, do you guys want to grab like flow paper and like kind of get yourself situated? If you haven't already.
He said that he didn't get it.
He didn't get it? All right, let
Yeah.
me see if because I think Miss Cruz had emailed us the code in case you guys didn't get the email. Let me see if I can get it that way. Right. Devin, can you give him this code? It's J, like the letter J, number
Okay.
6, D,
Is
1.
any of it capitalized?
No, it's all lowercase.
So
Um,
J6D.
J6D 17 W.
Okay. You said that the code didn't work.
Let me look at it one more time. J6E17W. That's one you gave him?
Yeah.
That's weird. I mean, I sent him the invite. His name is here, Aaron Agarwal, 1706, and it says invited. Let me check on my phone. Aaron, and then his last name is Agarwal.
Yeah.
Agarwal, and then 17. What is it? 1706.
Was it the AARON.AG?
.AGARWAL.
And then dot the next part.
Oh, so dot and then what was the number? 1706.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't put the dot at
Okay.
after his last name. That's probably why. All right, capital debate. That'll work. Okay. Sorry, tell him I sent him another one. Yeah, this time his name like actually came up instead of the email I typed in.
Okay.
All right, I think he accepted it, so hopefully he's joining us now. Hi, Aaron.
Hi.
Sorry for all the technical difficulties. All right, so thank you guys for joining us today. I know it was kind of last minute, but we this is actually a small class of two, and we're short one person, which means it would just be me and Ben Cat. So we figured it would be more productive if we did like a practice debate, even if you're not fully ready. It would just be good to get in the right mindset again now that it's 2-3 weeks away. You can get feedback and kind of ask any questions that way. Any questions over? Okay. All right. So Aaron and Davin, would you guys mind going pro? And Ben Cat will go con, if that's okay, since his pro case is pending. All right. So Aaron, I don't know if you want to grab like flow paper and like kind of get yourself situated. Obviously, open up the pro case.
Can I just go get flow paper?
Yeah, go ahead. So we'll take a couple minutes and then we'll start.
Wait, are we gonna do like cross-sex and all of that as well?
Yeah, so I just posted the club layout format on Classroom. So I'm just gonna follow that. We should have enough time to do the full debate. If worse comes to worse, we'll just chop out like half the time at the end. But I think we'll be fine. And remember, it's just practice, so don't worry about doing well or anything like that. There's no win or lose or anything like that today. It's really just to for you guys to get in the right mindset and for me to give you guys feedback.
Also, Aaron, I sent you up my prop case.
Yeah, okay, I already sent you my con. It's not fully done because like I still have to like okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Venkat, since you're Maverick today, you're gonna be doing all the con stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Remember, just practice, so no worries. All right, you guys all ready? As ready as you can be for now. All right, so just make sure you have the club layout format open too, because it's just good to refer back to it. If you're used to keeping your own time, that's fine too. I'll keep time as well. I'll try to give you guys a 2-minute warning, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and hopefully 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, this is just practice, so if you go a little over or anything like that, it's not a huge deal. And then you have 3 minutes prep time. I guess we can do even 3 minutes each if you guys want, just since you're virtually on your own at this point. And yeah, I think that's all. So Davin and Aaron, which one of you would be the first speaker for Pro?
Aaron, do you want me to do it? Because I know the case better.
Oh yeah, because you wrote it, so I think you should do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, that makes sense. So Davin, whenever you're ready, you can start the opening case, which remember is 4 minutes. And just remember, guys, to speak clearly, project your voice, try to keep a good pace, and try to have vocal variety. So in other words, just sound passionate and excited, not, monotone. Okay. All right. Whenever you're ready, you can start the call.
Okay. Our team's first argument is that there's bipartisan support and research among both citizens and politicians. According to the Chicago Tribune, term limits are popular. Some 61% of Americans support them, whether categorized by party, income, race, gender, or religion. And no demographic group does a majority oppose them. According to the Washington Post, many politicians are on board with some form of Supreme Court term limit. Republican presidential candidates like Mike Huckabee and Rand Paul have all endorsed it. Even some Supreme Court justices like the idea, at least in theory. In 2016, Justice Stephen Breyer said term limits were an idea that he could get behind, provided the limits were sufficiently lengthy. And there's also widespread report for term limits among the general public. In 2015, 2/3 of Americans supported a 10-year term limit on the Supreme Court justices, according to a Reuters IPSOS poll. Only 17% said that they supported life tenure. 66% of Democrats and 74% of Republicans supported the proposal, a strong and rare show of bipartisanship. According to CBS News, the good news for Americans who overwhelmingly support term limits for Supreme Court justices today is that regardless of their motives, the left and right are in agreement on this fundamental reform. Second argument is that it's predictable and evenly spread out appointments, which means that it's also less political. Having a schedule builds a stable foundation, which is what the judicial branch was intended to be. This removes the uncertainty and stress of if or when a party/candidate will get to nominate a new judge. As a CBS News points out, because of the long tenure of recent members of the Supreme Court, there were no vacancies on the High Court from 1994 to the middle of 2005. And the political backlash that is the bloody fight for nomination by presidents in Congress now. Parties and presidents will be guaranteed a say in future law. Every appointment is a political fight to the death, focused almost entirely on the ideological impacts of the future, rather than the resume and legal reasoning of the nominee today. Knowing that there will be a new vacancy on the court every 2 years will reduce the political rancor, and conservatives hope pare back the politics that have infected the one branch of government that is supposed to be beyond partisanship. This is also according to CBS News. Also, according to The Economist, each presidential term would just leave an equal mark on the court, and no single justice would remain on the bench for 30 or 40 years. The current system has to change. The single biggest source of friction in the last 2 presidential terms has been the Supreme Court nomination process. This is a chance to remove that stress from our political system. Thank you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Davin. Micah, did you want to take time before cross-examination, or you think you're ready?
Yeah, I think we're ready. Okay.
Um,
My time starts now. Does bipartisanship have anything to do with the law?
Well, pretty much what the point is saying is that one might say that like this would be a hard thing to do, especially because it's in the Constitution. But
Can you
the fact
answer
of the
the
matter,
question, please? Can you answer the question? Does
no,
bipartisanship? It doesn't. Okay. Also, you said that spread out appointments would reduce politics. Do you think that even though a Supreme Court justice isn't directly elected, the opinion of the country is still going to be put as a factor for their future appointments
Can
in
you
jobs
restate the
or
question? Can you restate the question?
yeah. Even though that Supreme Court justices aren't directly elected like other politicians are, do you think that they are still, the opinion of the country is still a factor for their future appointments or jobs?
Sorry, I'm confused by the question. Do you mean like?
Do you think that what people think of the judge, if they don't have term limits, do you think that what the people think of the judge after they come out of office due to term limits will affect their future jobs or not?
No, I don't think so. Especially because the whole point of term limits is because these justices are getting old and they're reaching a certain age, so it's proper for them to retire.
So when I'm asking you, if justices make a decision that causes them, that is impartial, but it's based on the law, but people don't agree with it, do you think that the opinion of the country will affect their future jobs or anything that they do in the rest of their lives?
Like their future jobs after the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Well, like what I was saying is that the point of the point of the Supreme Court that having an age limit is that they don't like ascend over the age that normally people will retire, so they're not necessarily having another job after.
Okay, and that's time. Thank you, gentlemen. So next would be the opening case for Khan. So Venkat, whenever you're ready, you have 4 minutes to present your case.
Okay. So my time will wait. Hold on. Okay, my time will start now. What is the purpose of a Supreme Court justice? Is it to display the ideas of the people? Is it to make everyone's lives easier? No, the purpose of a Supreme Court justice is to make the tough decisions. A Supreme Court justice has to make the decisions that people's souls and lives depend on. If we objectivize these decisions and make their jobs more political, a fair decision will be tougher to make and harder to find. For the two reasons of a Supreme Court justice's decisions not to be swayed by politics, and the ability for a Supreme Court justice's decisions not being risked by the state of the Supreme Court currently, I strongly urge you to vote for a calm ballot. Our first point is that a Supreme Court justice should be comfortable with making tough decisions. If their decisions are objectivized and they are forced to make the popular decision because of pressure from their own party and the public, there would be bias involved with every decision a justice makes. This is not fair towards people seeking unbiased advice and decisions, which is often the case for Supreme Court rulings. This is heard by Northwestern University law professor Meltzner, who said the intent was to insulate justices from partisan politics, to preserve the total independence of the judiciary. Once a justice is confirmed and takes a seat on the court, they're not beholden to anyone. This makes a Supreme Court justice free to issue rulings based on the law, rather than political favor, Meltzner says. The Supreme Court often decided choices that are not the majority idea, but continue to become some of the greatest decisions America has ever made. A judge who is concerned with being reelected but does not agree with the majority and has their own opinion would be swayed by bias of future employment. Supreme Court case Brom and Bett versus Ashley ruled that all people are born equal and deserve to lead their lives with rights, and 2 slaves were freed on this ruling. The idea of anti-slavery was not widely agreed with, and that Supreme Court ruling would have caused great outcry from the majority of the population. But because the Supreme Court decided to make the correct decision and were not worried about being ridiculed and exposed by outside opinions, they were able to make an impartial decision. There are many other examples of the Supreme Court making the contrarian vote, even though it was the right one. As there are still many cases in debate right now, both sides of the debate would have an equal stance against each other, and the outcry of a lost side of a certain debate would most probably jeopardize the job of a Supreme Court justice who made a thought-out decision. The job of a Supreme Court justice is to make the most impartial decisions, and we can't let any other factors, such as future employment, ridicule, public threats, or anything else get in the way of justice. If Supreme Court justices' decisions are objectivized and examined by not only the public, but Congress and the government as well, society and government would ridicule these impartial decisions based on their own beliefs, either being political or not. This creates an incentive for the Supreme Court of the United States justices to moderate their decisions and hear less divisive cases if they are put on term limits. Our second contention is that the value of the current state of the law is working well already. The rules of a Supreme Court justice being removed from their seat only by resignation, punishment for bad behavior, which is impeachment, and death has worked efficiently for the last 220 years, and there's no reason to change it now. There has been no Supreme Court justice that has been impeached, which means that justices have been using their seat wisely. If a change to the Constitution is made, it risks rippling the social fabric holding America together. And changes to the Constitution are generally met with an uproar, such as women's rights to vote and black suffrage. People will feel that the president is trying to extend their reach on society and the balance between the government and people. Just because different justices are constantly being elected, it does not mean that the problem of judicial activism would change. Judicial activism is a judge putting their own opinions or political ideas in front of the state of the law when making a decision. One problem term limits are trying to address is judicial activism. But as Chaplin's University's Dr. John Eastman puts it, the real con of the SCOTUS term limits is that the biggest problem facing the court is not addressed. I think it does not target the real problems of judicial activism, Eastman tells Bustle. One activist judge passing the baton to another does not create a check on judicial activism, he says. In conclusion, term limits should not be put in place for the reasons that Supreme Court justices should be comfortable with making tough decisions that will not be ridiculed by the public after they are out of office, and the law is currently functioning effectively, and term limits do not address the problems that do exist. For these reasons, we strongly urge a con ballot.
Thank you, Venka. All right, so next would be cross-examination first con. So that's you. Davin, did you want to use prep time?
No, I'm good. Wait, so how long is the speech?
You have 2 minutes to ask whatever you'd like.
Okay. So my time begins now. So your first argument was that it may their decisions will be more biased because it may affect their future jobs. But Supreme Court justices, they're already, like, to become a Supreme Court justice, you need a lot of experience. You're already at a certain age, and then they have to serve those terms. So do you think that every single Supreme Court justice is going to be focusing on what their job is going to be at the age of 80?
Most Supreme Court justices don't start off their terms at the age of 70. So you're proposing, in your speech, you proposed a 10-year term limit, as you said that most people would prefer a 10-year term limit. So if you're saying that they'll retire at the age of 80, that means you're saying that they'll get into the Supreme Court at the age of 70. Most people don't do that.
It was just an example, but still, most people retire, but I don't think that they're not going to be. Do you think that they're going to be thinking that they're going to be having these jobs after they're a Supreme Court justice for a long period of time?
I didn't mention just jobs. I mentioned ridicule and public opinions as well.
Okay. And your second argument, can you restate it again?
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Okay, so my second contention was that nothing is wrong. There's There's not many
Okay.
problems with the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right?
So bipartisan, like where both parties agree on something, is very rare. So do you think that when something very rare like this happens, when they both agree on something like this, that means that the thing that they agree on needs reform?
I don't think bipartisanship has anything to do with the law, and the SCOTUS is referring to the state of the law, and bipartisanship has nothing to do with that.
But when a majority of people from every single race, from every single background agrees with this is something that's probably important and needs change.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, can I get like a minute of prep time?
So this is now the attack case, which is 3 minutes.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
Okay. Exactly a minute.
Okay.
And Aaron, you're going to be cross-examining after, so just mentally prepare.
Okay. So my time starts now. So, Judge, my opponent stated that bipartisan support from both the government and people and both parties will, on this case of term limits, would mean that all people agree with this thing. So that means term limits should be put in place. But what I'm saying is that term limits have nothing to do with bipartisanship, but they have all to do with the law. Supreme Court justices have to deal with the law that everyone in the United States will have to deal with, and they have to make the hard decisions that people will have to live with for the rest of their lives. So if we objectivize these decisions and make it harder for Supreme Court justices to rule, even though it might be bipartisan, but bipartisanship has nothing to do with the law. Their second contention was that spread out appointment would reduce politics. But I absolutely don't agree with this, because if we make term limits itself, it would create the justices to make harder decisions, but those harder decisions would be suppressed because of their willingness to buckle due to the forces of their own party. Most Supreme Court justices are elected by a president, and that president elects a justice that has similar ideas to them. And if that justice doesn't create decisions that are similar to their presidents, this creates a lot of pressure from their party. And this pressure can, like I said, put a lot of difficulty when getting jobs in the future, when public opinion is forcing you down. And this pressure can be unbearable for most Supreme Court justices. So for these reasons of bipartisanship having nothing to do with the law and politics reigning over the SCOTUS of the United States, I strongly urge a comment.
Right. Aaron, do you want to take some prep time before cross-examining Benka?
No, I think I'm fine. Okay, so you said how you were saying in your attack how the pressure will make it harder for them to get jobs in the future. Okay, but how can you, like, a lot of Supreme Court members, they are usually like at the age of retirement at the end of their supposed term with term limits. So, like, how do you like suppose that they would have a job at the end? Because you said a job in your attack speech.
Yeah, like job. Yeah, job after they're retired. Yeah. Like not just like I said, not just job. There's public opinion and ridicule. That's
Wait, you said in your attack speech you only mentioned jobs, and you also said that bipartisan doesn't affect the law, but bipartisan affects like
I
our
said it doesn't
decisions,
relate to.
on the law.
I said it doesn't relate.
Affects our decisions on the law. Am I correct?
No, I said it doesn't relate to the law. So the Supreme Court justice
Bipartisan
it
affect
means two
our
parties.
decision against the law?
No,
Like having a new law imposed. Doesn't bipartisan affect that?
Bipartisanship means that Republicans and Democrats agree on a certain thing. So if Republicans and Democrats agree on a certain thing, that doesn't necessarily mean that that thing is agreeing with the law. The only thing that means that something is agreeing with the law is the law.
If Democrats and Republicans agree on the same thing and a law is imposed, then wouldn't the law go through the Supreme Court? I mean, wouldn't the law go through the Congress and pass and affect the law in general?
I don't understand the question. Like, are you saying that the law
bipartisan? Saying that bipartisan would affect our decisions. Like, all right, so the Republicans and the Democrats believe in one law in the Congress, then that affects how if the law gets passed or not, right?
It's not a law because it's not according to the Constitution. It's not a law. You keep saying that they're agreeing on a law, but they're not agreeing on a law.
Right, so that's time. Right, so Aaron, you are up again for the attack case. Did you want to take prep time?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Ready?
So my opponent said that the value of the laws, the law is working right now, and there's no need to change it. But I disagree because the Supreme Court has changed in general, as people have had a more average a more average lifespan. Also, he said how their decisions will be pressured by their jobs in the future, but Supreme Court members usually retire at an old age and won't have any jobs in the future. He also said that it will also spike ridicule, but he hasn't said an example or explained this point further. One point he had was Supreme Court justices should have confident decisions and not be beholden by anyone, and term limits will affect that. He hasn't explained this point either, and he also, in his attack speech, he said how term limits, how bipartisan doesn't affect the law, but bipartisan affects our decision in the Congress and affecting our law in general.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, so cross-examination again. So Venkat, now you would cross-examine Aaron. Did you want to take preference?
No, I'm good. Okay, so my time.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, one second.
No, it's okay.
Sorry. All right.
Okay, so my time starts now. Can you give me the exact number of the average lifespan for Supreme Court justices?
I don't have that on me.
Can you also give me the average retirement age for Supreme Court justices?
I don't have that.
Okay. You said that I have no evidence for Supreme Court justices getting ridiculed, but let's just use logic here. If you don't agree, if I don't agree with you, I mean, let's say this: if a Supreme Court justice makes a decision that nobody likes, okay, do you think that people are not gonna hear? They're not gonna hear outcry for it?
Well, term limits won't affect that, even if you don't have term
No,
limits.
just answer the question.
Well, even if you don't have term limits, then that will still happen. Well, yes, it will happen with with or without term limits.
So if I make a decision, right? Except I'm not beholden to anybody. Like you said that I didn't explain this point. So if I make a decision and I'm not beholden to anybody, do you agree or disagree that I'm not beholden to anybody at all?
You're not.
So, okay. That's it.
Okay.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. All right, so now we go into fun cases, and then from there will be summary and weigh. So we start with first pro, which means we are back to you, Davin. Did you want to take some prep time?
No, I'm good.
Sure, you guys have the time.
Yeah, I think I know what I'm going to say.
All right, defense case is 2 minutes.
So our first argument was about bipartisan support and how there's people from a broad range of backgrounds and how they all support this idea. And so the opponents said that this doesn't relate to the law. But what this relates to is the fact that this is a topic that's important, and bipartisan support is something that's very rare. And the people of all backgrounds, barely a majority of people all agree on something. So this is something that obviously needs reform. And this completely relates to the topic because it's saying that this is important, this is a pressing matter, and that's why we're having this debate. Our second argument was that how it allows things to be less predictable and less political. And so they refuted this by saying that Supreme Court justices will care about their future and that they won't make the decisions that they should be making, the hard decisions. But if they're not making the hard decisions, then they shouldn't be a Supreme Court justice. These people are carefully selected, and they're the best of the best, the people who are the most experienced. These people are meant to make the hard decisions. That's the whole role of the Supreme Court justices. They're meant to take on the hard trials, take on the controversial ones, and make the decisions that they deem to be the best ones. Okay, that's my time.
Okay. How much prep time do I have? I think you're muted.
Sorry. You used 1 minute so far, so you would still have 2 minutes.
Okay.
And as a Maverick, you usually get more time anyway.
Okay. I think I'm ready anyway.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think I am.
All right, if you insist.
How about the defense case? It's
Defense case is 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Okay, so my time starts now. Judge, my opponent attacked our case by saying that the SCOTUS has changed in general by having higher average lifespans, and they have no evidence to support this. And they also said that people are retiring at a very old age in the Supreme Court justice. They don't give me any numbers or statistics or evidence to support this. So I don't see how they can attack my case by saying that Supreme Court justices are retiring at higher ages and they're having a general higher lifespan when they have no evidence to support this. I think this completely illegitimizes their claim because they're not giving substance to their attack. Also, they said that I have no evidence to support why Supreme Court justices will get ridiculed for making impartial decisions. Well, so let's just use logic here. If a Supreme Court justice makes a decision that many people in the public don't agree with, and many people in their own party don't agree with, and they are held to term limits, that means that the outcry that they are hearing from the public and the pressure that their own party is putting on them is going to be heard not just during the term limit, but after they're out of office, which puts pressure in future employment. So I think that my opponent attacking our case by saying having no evidence it completely legitimizes their claims by saying by not understanding our point. We're trying to say that if anybody has to make the most impartial decision, which is the Supreme Court justice has to, we need to give them the environment and circumstances so that they can make that same impartial decision without pressure from their party and the public. So for these reasons, Judge, I strongly urge a conduct.
Right, perfect timing. All right, so now we go into the summary and weigh, which are 2 minutes each as well. So second, so that would be you, Aaron. Did you want to use preference?
Yeah. Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so whenever you're ready, you can start the clock.
Okay, my time starts now. So so the Supreme Court, before this age limit, the age of average death for the Supreme Court was 70. Now it is 83 years, according to Bloomberg.com, and this shows how the Supreme Court changed, and the law also has to change, and it will not keep on working. Also, he says how ridicule can change the decisions of a Supreme Court. Well, with or without term limits, there will still be ridicule, so that also doesn't support his case. He also doesn't understand when we say bipartisanship and how it relates to the law. It relates to the law by but this law, the reason why this point is so pressing of term limits is because, as my partner said, there's 74% of Republicans and 66% of Democrats support this term limits, and that affects how we should look at this term limits. Overall, our case has more points that have been left untouched, and yeah.
Thank you. Right. Franca, did you want to run some prep time before summary and way?
Yeah, just run the clock.
Ready, Franca?
Yeah. Okay. So my time starts now. Judge, this debate comes down to the environment SCOTUS justices need to make impartial decisions. A justice has to make decisions based on the law, not based on the public, their party, but the law. If term limits are applied, then Supreme Court justices would make biased decisions and hear less divisive cases. This completely destroys the purpose of SCOTUS, as decisions made here are key to society. The most logical way to create the most unbiased Supreme Court justice decisions are without term limits. Term limits completely destroy the way that a Supreme Court justices would be able to make ideas as they are applied pressure from their party and the public, not only during during their seat in the Supreme Court, but after, which makes it extremely difficult to not hear the pressure being heard from their party and the public. And for these reasons, of a Supreme Court justice needing to make impartial decisions to be able to make the decisions that people's souls and lives depend on, I strongly urge a calm down.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So we have finished your first practice debate for this trimester, I think. All right, so I just want to quickly give you guys some feedback before we end. So I think overall, I mean, it was pretty good considering that, we're still working on our cases and I know you guys are still building evidence. One of the main things on both sides is right now just the lack of evidence, I guess, when you're attacking and defending. So you guys are using a lot of just kind of logic-based argument, which has to be like done effectively for it to be able to, effectively attack or defend. Just something to keep in mind moving forward. You just want to prepare as much evidence cards as you can, anticipating what your opponent is going to bring to the table and how you would attack that. So that way you look prepared with evidence. But I'm just going to go through kind of one by one, just kind of share, I guess, what I wrote down. And then if you have any questions, just let me know. Also, Davin and Aaron, this will probably be recorded and posted on like my classroom page. So that way you don't have to like write down the notes or anything. You can just play it back if you needed to. All right, so Davin, starting with you because you started with the opening case. I think your opening case was pretty good overall. You had a good voice. You had a strong demeanor. You will need to practice your case a little bit more in terms of pronunciation and comfort with it. But overall, I think you had a clear structure and everything. I would consider actually two things. So when you started speaking about politicians who, all these politicians and economists who support this, the widespread support, it wasn't clear to me initially if that was part of your hook or if that was your contention until I realized it was going on, and then eventually you said on to my second contention. You just want to make sure you're being super clear with that because you don't want to lose your judge from the start. I would, if you can, work a little bit on that first contention because I think the biggest flaw is that it's pretty much lacking substance. I think the statistics and studies that show the amount of support for term limits is super helpful if it's used to strengthen another point. But I feel like to make an entire contention that, well, everyone agrees, so therefore we should all agree, is almost illogical because I think Venkat's first question should have been, why is there so much widespread support? And then that would be your actual contention. So what are the benefits of term limits? Because I think you shied away from that as opposed to, like, I felt like you lost sight of what your debate is really about. And there's lots of benefits to term limits. So I would just consider using your evidence, but using it to strengthen another contention as opposed to making it its own. Your second one, I think, was much stronger, that it would just make things less political. I think you did well explaining the impact about how pretty much the current system needs to change and how the vacancies are never, equally divided, I guess, which I think made sense the way that you put it together from a judge's point. Also, just kind of a small thing, but with your sources, you cited things like, according to CBS News or according to economists, try to find like more credible sources, I guess, if you can find individuals. Venkat cited a lot of like, law professors with their names and credentials. If you can do that, it would just boost it up a little bit. But I think overall you did okay. I think when you were cross-examined, you did well. Just be sure to be confident. I think your confidence is good with the opening case, and then it just kind of slowly diminishes through that, which is not at all uncommon. But just make sure you are being persistent and just consistent with that. With when you cross-examined Venkat, I think you did a good job overall, but I'm not sure how efficient it was. So remember, the purpose of cross-examination in this case, after his opening case, is to get some sort of material that you will use to build an attack case. So I felt like a lot of your questions were kind of just clarifying questions, and it really wasn't clear how you were going to use any of his responses for an attack case, which is really hard. But during the debate, you definitely want to take, even if it's 30 seconds with your partner, and just look at your flow sheets together. And ideally, you'd be thinking about it as you're flowing. What are the flaws of his case? Which, trust me, there's plenty of flaws on both sides. So that way, when you're asking questions, you're able to get what you need to build that attack case. Defend case, I think was fine overall as well. Restated evidence. Yeah, just make sure it's not, I feel like your endings are often choppy. So just make sure you give, clear closure with that. Venkat, I'll go to you and then I'll go to you, Aaron. So Venkat, with your opening case, no, sorry, you started by cross-examining Davin, which I think you did really well actually initially. So it seemed like you got a lot of good information out of him. I think you could have used it a little better later on, but I think overall your cross-examination is definitely getting much better. Your opening case, I think, was pretty good overall. You were a little over with time. Definitely you're going to need to chop down out of your first contention. You spent the bulk of the time on that one. And then by the time you started your second contention, you only had 30 seconds left. So you ended up going, I think, about a minute and 2 seconds over, which is fine for this. It's just practice. But I don't want you to have to, I don't want you to see the judge say 30 seconds and you realize you didn't even start your next contention. So just kind of think about how you're going to just say the same things, but in fewer words. This is a minor thing, Venkat, but for your second contention, instead of phrasing it, but I think you phrase it by saying that our current situation is working well. That's a very subjective statement. So I would just change it to the current situation is working efficiently. And then your evidence will support that. It's a minor thing, but the thing is that it's way too subjective to say it's working well or not well. But if you say efficiently and use, it's just a semantics thing, but I think it'll just help with that. I think overall you did pretty good. There was one thing I wanted to say here. Your attack case is definitely going to need work, and attack case is definitely one of the hardest things because, again, it's not, you can anticipate, but it's really just what your opponent has to say and what you're able to get out of them. But you kind of use it as more a way to reinforce your own contentions as opposed to actually attacking theirs. So remember, you want to attack your opponent's contentions head on and directly. And you don't want to shy away from that as well. So I felt like you kind of wanted to, but then you just ended up going back to your contentions. And the whole thing was just kind of missing substance as a whole. When you attacked their second contention, you straight up said, I disagree, which, again, it's not about you disagree. Of course, you're going to disagree. You're on the opposing side. But ideally, you'd have evidence of those with credentials who disagree for good reason. But I think overall, the core of it was really good. Your attack case was 2 minutes. You always want to fill in the time. Start by attacking your opponent's case first, the flaws of their case, explaining why those contentions do not stand. And then if you have extra time, go back to your own contentions. But I think because you jumped right to your own contentions to start with, it kind of threw it off. For your defense case, same thing. You just need more evidence. I mean, a lot of it was just kind of circulating back to the same things that were said. Ideally, if you can bring in new evidence during the defense case, that's like kind of a golden thing that'll help you with the judge. It wasn't bad overall, but your defense case turned into an attack and it just kind of was all over the place. Your summary and way, though, was really good, Venkat. So you kind of brought it down to, what it comes down to. You looked at the bigger picture and you kind of brought your points home in a way that actually, made sense and was effective. So I think your summary speech was really good. And then, sorry, I'm speed throughing this just to get through it. Erin, you were second pro speaker. You have a good voice, and I think you have a really clear voice too, which can be really effective, but you definitely need more confidence. So a lot of pauses, a lot of which again is normal. But the more you practice your case and the more confident you feel in your evidence, the more it'll actually come across. And if you don't feel confident, just take it, because I think one of your biggest drawbacks is that you didn't seem effective while cross-examining, while doing the attack case, which really goes a long way. Same thing with cross-examination, just as a whole, you just want to be more efficient. You spent a lot of time building your question. I think you spent 30 seconds just recapping everything and then asking the question. But in the future, you just want to jump right to the question because time is in the essence here. If you realize your opponent is kind of going on about something you're not, it's not the direction you want to take, you can just say thank you to get him to stop and then move on to the next question. So that way you're not losing your time. Your attack case, I think, was okay. You always want to go in order. I think you started with the second contention, but try to go in order of what was presented. So your flow sheet is your outline for the attack case. You should at that point have your opponent's contentions, what you got out of cross-examination, and then you're using that to build the attack case. Again, the main thing, and this is across the board, is just the lack of evidence. You kind of recapped a lot. Yeah, I just said kind of main thing, you just need solid evidence to build your attack case and more confidence. Your attack case was also 1.5 minutes. So I know it's tough, but you have to fill in the time and always take prep time before the attack case. That's one of the harder cases to do. And lastly, your summary and way, I think started off really good. But remember, summary and way is not an attack case or a defense case. And a lot of kids fall into that trap. So you want to be super clear that at this point, you're not attacking, you're not defending, you're just kind of looking at the big picture now. So in your case for the pro, you can really go into our current like political situation. So you want to address the judge. There has been, you can even bring up like the Ginsburg or Kavanaugh situation, since those are very current in our news. And just look at things that matter. So one of the scariest things about lifetime tenure is that if a person is appointed like Kavanaugh, and say there's so much pushback from the public, there's really nothing we can do about it. And now he's there in office for those who disagree with him. So you want to take that kind of the big picture, this idea that people may be powerless, try to kind of think about the big picture there and phrase it in a way that really drives your points home. So I think in your case, you really have to just look at the big picture again, and just summarize, the pros and cons on both ends, but really what it comes down to. And in your case, try to scare kind of your audience, I guess, of what is problematic with lifetime tenure. We have no say, and if that person is problematic, they keep their position. No one has been impeached yet. So this idea of, the lack of power in the people, I think you can use as a means to kind of bring your points home, I guess. Okay, I know that was a lot. Any questions about anything so far? All right, so Venkat?
How do you conclude a speech? Because I always find myself just stuck with the last point, and I don't know what to say.
Yeah, and this was something on both sides where a lot of you guys are just kind of and yeah, and then it just kind of ends. The easiest, if you're stuck, the easiest way to end a speech is just go right to, for these reasons, we urge a con ballot. For these reasons, we urge a pro ballot. So at least there's some sort of closure. But with the defend case, for example, you can jump to the idea of, for these reasons, our contentions still stand. So now you're showing why your contentions, assuming you gave evidence to defend it. And for the attack case, for these reasons, our opponent's contentions do not stand, and we therefore urge a con ballot. So for attack and defend, try to go to why contentions stand or do not stand based on everything you've presented, and then urge that con ballot or pro ballot. And even if you're short on time, save yourself 5 seconds to get to that. If you have a whole minute remaining still, then you want to fill the time a little bit and then go right to that point, so that way there is closure to the speech. And Devin and Aaron, I think those are good tips for you guys as well, because mainly you, Aaron, it just kind of the speech just stops. So you want to make sure it's clear when you are ending the speech, and make sure that you're ending it on your, being confident and being clear with what that speech was geared towards. I hope I didn't overwhelm you guys. All right. So, all right. Sorry, I kept you guys a little later, but I will end here. And again, hopefully this recording will be posted soon, so that way you can just play it back later on. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.